Welcome to the UIAAA Connection podcast. Hometown Ticketing is proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection podcast and to provide schools nationwide with the best options for digital ticketing for their events. Visit their website at hometownticketing.com to learn how they can make digital ticketing possible and simple at your school. Thank you to Hometown Ticketing for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection podcast.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter. And today we are excited to have from the state of Illinois, Becky Moran, CMAA. I was going to say current chair of the Credentials Committee, but that's not true. So now it would be former chair of the Credentials Committee and now NIAAA board member. Becky, thanks for being here today. How are you?
I'm doing well, Hutch. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, we only have the best on, as you well know. Let's begin by sharing with our listeners where you grew up, college, your first job, that type of thing, maybe athletics you were involved in as a youth.
Sure. I was, let's see, what sports did I do? So we'll start out with, as a kid, I started playing basketball. It's probably the first organized thing I did. Then I played soccer and couldn't get enough of sports as a kid. Clearly, as an athletic administrator, that makes sense for the career path that I chose. I have an unusual path to athletic administration. My undergrad's in sports management and I wasn't a teacher coach. I just was coaching, and then my undergrad was in sports management. And so kind of went on from there. I have a master's in education and a master's in athletic administration. So, and that one's from Ohio University. That's kind of my background in terms of coaching. I coached soccer and I coached volleyball at the collegiate and high school levels.
Where in college then? I didn't know
community
that.
College. I coached soccer at the community college that I went to for 4 years after I finished playing.
And you were probably much better at it than I was. I had soccer for 1 year. This goes way back. So think about it. So it's got to be 1982 maybe. I've been in my third or fourth year of teaching. The principal calls me in. They're starting soccer in the state of Utah, wants me to be the soccer coach. Of course, I said yes. And of course, I didn't tell him that my extent in soccer was taking the soccer, volleyball, tennis class at the university. And so I pulled up my notes to make sure that we had 11 people on the field and not 10 to make sure. But the best thing I did was I hired a fellow named Yahweh Sanchez from South America. And I'm telling you what, he knew soccer.
Yeah. And
we were very, very good. And it was not because of me, but I was smart enough to know I didn't know soccer, but I found someone who did. So that's kind of a funny story. So let me ask you this. So you're kind of in that second generation of women with Title IX. So I think that obviously the pioneers, if that's the right word, had come and gone. And by the time you started playing when you were in high school and younger, it was not a novel thing. It was just common. It was just something that happened because people were used to it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I would say that's true. But I would still say there was probably still some of that hangover from that. Like as a soccer player growing up, from the time I started in third grade until I was a junior in high school, there was not a girls team for me to play on. So my junior year in high school was the first year I played on an all girls team.
So let me ask you this, if I may. So what year was that in high school?
1994.
Okay. And that sounds, I think back to the year that I coached soccer, and we had a young lady on our team. We kept her. She started all the JV games, started a couple of varsity games, but back in 82 in Utah, it was just soccer. And it probably wasn't until, if my memory serves me right, the early 90s when they then started girls soccer, and then girls was in the fall and boys was in the spring. So.
And ours was opposite. So I was wrong. That was the spring of 95 that we got girls in my high school.
Excellent. Let me ask you this, Becky. Tell us about some of the mentors in your life that have had an influence on you, both in the NIAAA and outside of the NIAAA.
Sure. There are too many to name all of them, but I will give you a couple. And I'll start with my mom and dad, and both of them for different reasons. My dad was typical blue collar, hardworking, worked, 60, anywhere from 40 to 70 hours a week to make ends meet for our family. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom, but did everything she could to be available for us as a parent. I can probably count on one hand the number of games my mom missed in all the years of me playing. And then also did a ton of stuff at our school. She was that volunteer PTA. For a long time, we cut Campbell's soup labels in our house because my mom was the Campbell's soup person for our school district. She ran market day for a long time. And so, while she didn't have a paid career, certainly was very involved in, and I think that helping spirit that she had, I have, and then that hardworking component I get from my dad. So those would be the two, just from an early on, kind of shaped me in terms of who I am. As a worker and how I do what I do. In terms of career type stuff, I had some great coaches along the way. My middle school volleyball, basketball coach is probably somebody I always credit for just really going above and beyond and expecting more of athletes and then getting it out of us. And so she was probably one of the better coaches that I had in my playing career. Had my college soccer coach was another one. We're still in contact today. As somebody who's had an impact on who I was as a coach and who I've become as an adult. And then just the athletic directors, the first AD who gave me a chance. Like I said, my undergrad's in sports management, so I had to do an internship with that. And I ended up in a high school athletic department. And so for this guy that I called out of the blue to say, hey, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, can I come work in your high school athletic department for 600 hours? And he said yes, and then put me on as a coach and gave me that opportunity. That was Al Janulis at Vernon Hills High School in 2003. So that was a few years ago. But the first AD that I got to meet, and he, in that short time we were together, just had a tremendous impact on me. Told me to go ahead and get certified. So he's the first person who ever said to me, get involved with our state association. And he happened to be running our conference that year. So I got to help him out a little bit on that end and see the backside of what happens for that. But said, that's what you need to do. Get in, take some classes, get certified. And he was the first person to say that. So, and then just from there, my involvement at my state level, John Van Fleet, who you know very well,
Yes.
was a tremendous mentor for me and took me under his wing as a very young AD, and let me get involved at a state level doing some stuff with leadership training, which led to my involvement at a national level with leadership training, and then just from there on and on. So Hutch would be somebody I would consider a mentor.
You're too kind.
Nance, I know, don't laugh. I am not. But it made me feel very welcome. I mean, that's a big, scary room for a young AD, and I felt pretty welcomed from the very beginning. I was able to do some things there. I got involved. Don Bales allowed me some opportunities to do some things and have some leadership roles in what we do with our state coordinators in those meetings. Mark Armstrong was the first person I ever taught a course with at the national level, and just his willingness to take this young AD who, again, I always say people gave me opportunities before I deserved them, and so but took me and said, hey, here's how you can do. You did great. Here's how you can be better. And I thought that was just tremendous for me as a young AD, and I appreciate that. I appreciate people that take that time to say, I see more in you than you see in yourself, or here's where I see you going, kind of thing. And so those are some of the people that I can cite early on in my career. There's certainly been a tremendous number of individuals that have continued to help me and mentor me along the way. Tina Woolard is somebody who I count as a friend, as a colleague, and as a mentor. And she's really been helpful to me. I've known her. I actually coached her sons in soccer years ago. So I've known Tina for a long time before I was, full in as an athletic administrator. And she's been somebody who's been really tremendous for me. So
Well,
I could
okay.
go on probably for the rest of the afternoon, but we probably
That's
want to
fine.
move on from there.
Along those same lines, and speak to our audience about your journey with the Illinois athletic directors. And you touched a little bit on it, but then obviously that journey took you to the NIAAA, and of course now where you are as a member of the board. So speak to that.
Sure. So like I said, very early on in my career, I started, when I jump in, I want to do something, I want to do it well. And so every state conference I went to, we have a summer retreat we offer. So in a calendar year, we're offering anywhere between 7 and 10 opportunities for different classes at a state level each year. And so I was taking a class in each one of those time slots. How many classes can I get? How quickly can I do this and learn and be great at what we're doing? And so I was always around, and they're like, hey, you're always around. Do you want to help? And that was John who asked me many years ago now to get involved with helping out with our professional development committee at a state level, and then start teaching courses at a state level. And so that's been, probably, 14, 15 years now, that I was able to join him on his professional development committee, and then ultimately take over that as the professional development coordinator for the state of Illinois. And so for Illinois, I coordinate all of our courses. I help coordinate our workshops at our state conference. And then I am the point person for our State Board of Education in terms of providing professional development credit and continuing ed hours for our teachers / athletic administrators who need that for certification renewal every year. Along the way, I've done other things. At one point, I was the person in charge of all of our workshops at our conference. I've been a co-chair running our state conference. And so I think, what you can hear there is that I'm a very willing participant in making things happen in our state and trying to help out and do those things. And that's kind of what led to my national involvement. I started teaching at a national level about 12 years ago, and that was the first involvement that I had at a national conference. I've since done some workshops. Like I mentioned, I help Don Bales in terms of leadership at our state coordinators meeting to try and provide great opportunities for our state coordinators to do what they do in our states for their membership. And then somewhere along the way, I think it was 12, 13, I applied to be on a committee because I wanted to get involved. And credentials was not one of the 3 that I chose, right? You get to pick what 3 would you like, and then they called and said, would you do credentials? And I said,
exactly.
Sure, I don't know what it is, but absolutely. I just wanted to get involved. And so that's kind of where my journey at a national level started. And it's just kind of grown from there. Like I said, I try to get very involved. I love what I do. And I also really enjoy the part that I get to help out and kind of play a decision-making role in how we do what we do to provide the best opportunities for our membership.
Well said, thank you. Let's then continue on and talk about the Credentials Committee, talk about your time on there. Obviously, you were a chair when you left the committee, but talk about A, the fulfillment you get from just serving on an NIAAA committee, but B, the changes, for example, the changes in the election process, just in your time that you were on the committee.
Sure. So like I said, I like to be involved. I like to be helping make happen what we do. And so credentials, once I got on, I was like, oh, you don't really know what most of our committees do. I mean, yes, there's titles, and yes, they somewhat make sense, but I don't think we fully understand and appreciate what anybody does until we sit in their seat. I was just thinking about that of an assistant principal in our building or a principal in our building. Do we really know, and do they really know what we do in our roles? And so I think that, we can reflect on those pieces. And so I got on and they said, hey, sign up for some times. Here's what you're supposed to be doing. And at the time when I started, we were still taking paper ballots, wearing our red vests around, making sure that everyone voted. Everyone got a sticker for voting. It was a very, I felt it was a little intense trying to make sure that everyone voted. It's a different feeling now because we
Right.
don't have that same, drop off site for that vote like we used to. And so in the time that I've been on there, I actually skipped over being the co-chair, like a vice chair, because in the year I applied to be the vice chair and I was going to be the vice chair, Josh Scott became our secretary. And so Josh left our committee and I defaulted to our chair position. So that was a interesting process to not have. I was on the committee for about 2 years when that happened. So wasn't fully understanding everything that happened. And I was like, hey, by the way, you're going to run it. So I think, again, some great support. My committee has been tremendous in terms of that. So they were awesome to and have grace with me as I learned my role as that committee chair, as it was the board and the NIAAA office while I transitioned to that space. But so that was an interesting leap from committee member to committee chair.
Sure.
And then we went from taking paper ballots to being online and virtual for those, and not virtual, but that's a word we use now, but electronic for all of our voting. And we certainly had some hiccups in those first couple of years, but I think we've finally found a system that works very well for us and has been great for providing our membership an opportunity to have a voice in the election.
Well, but the great thing is, and obviously I'm being a little facetious, you're from the Chicago area. So, I mean, the phrase vote early, vote often, we can always fall back on that. Yes.
I suppose worked in my favor this year. So as I am now in one of those at-large positions that election is for.
All right. So I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but let's go back to the question
Sure.
that we may or may not want to ask. What's your biggest failure and what did you learn from it in life?
Sure. So, well, first and foremost, I don't know that when I read that first, when you sent it to me, and now that I still continue to think about it, I don't think of anything I've ever done as a failure. I may not have gotten it right, but I'm only a failure if I quit and don't try again. And so I would say one of those bigger hiccups,
Disappointment, at least.
sure, we'll call it that. Failure is a real strong word there, Hutch. But so I would say when I started at my last school, it was my first full AD position. I'd been an assistant for a few years before that, and I just jumped in running instead of jumping in and making sure that I had my people on board to move forward with me. You get too far out in front of people that are supposed to be following you and they can't find you. So I think that was, if I would say, that was probably one of my bigger challenges that I had to go back and kind of undo. And so they always say you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And so to try and win those people over after, just made it more difficult.
Oh, absolutely. That's got to
So
be
I
much
think that-
tougher.
Yeah. So I think that's something that I've definitely learned from in terms of, if anyone that knows me, I have a new word for how I'm working. Thank you, Jeremy Boone. I'm convicted about the work that I'm doing.
Well, convicted, at least not conflicted.
No, but I do what I do with conviction, and I have passion, and I'm always looking to improve from where we are. And so sometimes that's hard because I need to slow down, like I said, and make sure that people are with me so that we can move forward together. And so one of the phrases that I have adopted since then is, how can we get better together? And so it forces me to slow down. It forces me to ask the questions. And so while I think I've always known that, it makes what you're trying to do better for everybody.
All right, so let's go back to part of what you talked about earlier. Let's talk about, and I know your time on the NIAAA board has been a little different because you're now in the era of, you've won the election, and I think you had maybe one in-person meeting in, I want to say February, and then all of a sudden it's virtual for the next at least 14 months. And I know you're going to get to meet this year in July, but talk about your time on the board, because I know a lot of people, I know I've had the opportunity to serve on the board, and a lot of people hear about that, but I don't know that it's something you can describe adequately, even though you've been on there, until you've actually served and been in that position, because it's such a blessing. But I'll turn the time to you to let you reflect on your time on the board.
Sure. So my time is shorter than you will give me credit for. I won the only virtual election, hopefully, that we ever have to have, just in December. So I have not been.
Oh, so I see. I misspoke. Okay. I was a year ahead of myself.
Yep.
So you have not yet met in person. Your meetings have been virtual that Wednesday in December, virtual then in February, and now your first in-person meeting will be in July.
Yes, and I am very much looking forward to that. But regardless of the way that we're meeting, I mean, obviously you get to know who people are. I think it's great to do that. I think it goes back to what I said earlier. You think you know what something is until you get into it, and then you truly appreciate what it actually is. And so when you say you're humbled to do something, I'm tremendously humbled to be one of, how many are, and I'm terrible at numbers, how many are there? 12, 15
14-ish, yeah.
Right. sitting on the board right now. And so just to have that opportunity to serve, and I've taken some time now in the last 6 months to reflect on that, and what that means and how many members we have and how few are ever going to get that opportunity, and just feel very fortunate that the timing worked out and I was able to win. Thank you to everyone who voted, but to let me have this opportunity to serve our membership and really hopefully help to move us in that direction that we're headed.
Well, talk about this, and I can throw this out because it's been probably 22 years for me, but many people may not know. I think it's a tough thing to throw your name out there, throw your hat in the ring, so to speak. I lost the election in 1999, long before I knew you, and it was, of course, I was very new with the NIAAA. It was kind of an eye opener, but talk about the decision, what it takes, because everyone just thinks, oh yeah, you can run, you're going to win. It's not really quite that easy.
It's not really quite that easy. I don't know. I think what we got to do differently was, in that virtual format, was record that speech. But when you do something like that, it's you are much more critical, because you go back and watch it over and over and over and find the pieces that are wrong. When you have to do that live, you get your 3 minutes and that's what it is, and take it or leave it. And so I felt more stress watching that video be played, even though it had been recorded 2 months or earlier, in that moment, because it made it very real to put myself out there. And you don't know, in a live situation, if you're the second person, which I was, I got to hear the first speech before I went up there. In this virtual, it was, you put it out there and you have no idea what's coming. So I think that there's just there was some apprehension with that piece. And I think mostly because it's something that I truly wanted, and I thought both of us were very well deserving of the opportunity to serve on our board, and both of us have done some really great things for the NIAAA and hope to continue that. And so that was just that piece. So yeah, it's interesting. I feel, again, very honored to sit in the position I have, and I don't take this position lightly, for what I get to do and represent our country on the NIAAA board.
Well, it's interesting you talk about the process and about how difficult it was. And of course, I know firsthand, but even difficult for you, people need to understand you were the chair of the credentials committee for 3 years. So you got to introduce the previous candidates. You introduced Jamie when he won in Maryland the year before that. And so people need to understand it was even tough for you. You probably have a better understanding of it than anyone, because of your position as the credentials chair, but that still makes it difficult. So I like that answer. I think that's great. Let me ask you this. What's one common myth about being an athletic administrator that you would like to debunk?
That we just watch games. Like that our job is to just watch games, and there's nothing else that goes along with it. I wish people didn't believe that about what we did.
No, I think that's exactly people would say. Really, Hutch, your job? You get to go to a football game Friday night. You got to get a basketball game Friday night. And I'm going, well, yeah, I get to go, but you don't know what I'm looking at when the game's going on. How much of the game do I get to see? I've got to make sure the officials, any number of other things that happen.
I actually think watching games is one of the last things that we actually do. I was just having this conversation with somebody last week, exactly what you said. I'm watching for, where are people at? What's going on? Just last week I was watching soccer. I was sitting up at the press box and a four-wheeler came on campus. And it picked one of our students from practice. And I was like, okay, just stay on the road. And we have a little turnaround up front and I can see all that from my press box. And I was like, just stay on the road. Nope, right through my brand new grass fields. And I was not a happy camper. But that's what I'm watching. There was a game going on while that was happening, but I wasn't watching the game. I was watching everything else that happens on our campus at that time. And I love the conversation with the coaches. But did you see that play? No, I didn't. I'm sorry. I was doing, whatever else it might be that we were handling during games. I think it might be one of the further things from what we actually do than anything else people might think.
No, I think that's exactly what. Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question that's off script. It just came to me.
Sure.
I know that you have a child that plays hockey, and I was thinking about, shouldn't be thinking about it, but I was thinking about possibly the most famous hockey movie, tongue-in-cheek, Slapshot, because the most famous one would be Miracle. But talk about being the mom of a hockey player, and are you a different mom as a hockey player because you're an athletic administrator, or are you just like the rest of the moms?
I am a very different sport parent than most. From early on, in both my kids play. My son is hockey, like you mentioned. He also plays baseball. My daughter plays volleyball. I don't sit with parents. I don't cheer. I will clap once in a while. I just go in and it's a very different perspective. I think mostly because I'm hoping my kids get. I'm not looking for dollar signs, college scholarships, opportunities. I'm hoping for my kids to have a great time, to have fun, and develop as a player and as a person by being part of sport. And that's my focus. And so just listening to other parents, my husband also coaches. So there's another reason not to sit with parents, because sometimes parents don't always agree with what coaches say. And I'll tell you a quick funny story about being a hockey mom. So again, I don't sit with parents. I sit about a bleacher away from people. And it's not because I just want to watch the game, is really what I want to do, is just watch the game. And so I had a mom come over the first year my son was playing with this new team, and he was probably 10. And she came over, and she was our team mom, and she was a very happy, chipper team mom, like, what you would expect. And she came down, she sat down and introduced herself to me, and she's like, and you can come and sit with us if you want. And I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, this is where I want to be. I want to watch the game. This is how I take in sport. So very different in that regard. I do, just given everything we know, I try not to be that parent for my kids, like in the car, thank you for letting me watch you play. Thank you. If you want to talk about the game, we can talk about the game, but I'm not going to bring it up. I want you to do it. Did you have fun? Really, that's my focus for my kids, is did you have fun? And if it's not fun, then why are we doing this? And so I think in terms of perspective too, like that's my, I don't yell at officials. I don't yell at my kid. I don't yell at other people's kids. But that's how I take in games here when I get to watch them too. But
sure. Well, let me ask you this: what's the favorite part of your job of being an athletic administrator?
I have two. One is just watching our kids. Like I watch my own children. I love watching our kids do what they do. So getting out and getting after it, whether that's in practice, whether that's in games, engaging, getting better, and just seeing their development over the course of time that we have them. It's such a transformational time in their lives from 14 to 18 and so we're preparing young adults, and so seeing them come in as children and leave us as young adults, I think that's probably one of my favorite thing is those impacts that we have on their lives. And but also just seeing coaches develop, seeing coaches be inspired to work with our kids and do what they do, and then watching them develop over the course of their careers as well to get better with working with our children. Those would be the two things. And it's about development of people and helping them get there where they want to go.
Very good answer. I want to just go back and follow up on that development of coaches aspect that you talk about, because many people, I don't believe outside of our community would realize a lot of that has to do with proper leadership at the athletic director level and in the school, and having the proper funds, etc., to allow your coaches to go to that coaching clinic, to possibly, if you're in Utah, go to Las Vegas for a Nike football clinic or a Nike basketball or baseball clinic. And I know not all schools do that, and I know not all schools are as supportive. So I think that's very important.
Oh, for sure. And we try to do a lot of that stuff in-house as well, just having conversations about what it means to be a great coach, and getting our coaches to work together to understand that and support each other. Hey, this isn't working for me, what has worked for you, those types of things. So in providing that platform inside of our school, it doesn't cost us any money to allow them to network and work with each other to get better as well.
Sure. Now let me ask you this, let me make this clear, because at the school you are presently working at, is that considered Chicago proper? Is it considered suburban Chicago? Is it considered way suburban Chicago?
We are a far north suburb of Chicago. So we're about 50 miles outside of downtown where I'm at. So pretty far. I mean, we're not in the sticks, but we're close.
So you're north of Northwestern then?
Oh, yeah.
University, sure. Way north. Mm-hmm. So, but not far enough. So how far from the Wisconsin border?
5 miles.
Oh, okay.
8 miles, not far. Yeah, I'm almost to Wisconsin.
Okay, excellent. So how far from, let's see, Milwaukee's an hour away?
Yeah, we're
Kenosha's a half hour maybe, if my geography is correct.
Yeah, we're about centrally located between Chicago and Milwaukee on the Illinois side of the border.
Okay, so the big burning question is Packers or Bears?
I know this isn't going to go over well. I'm not a huge NFL fan,
Oh,
but
okay,
if I was a picking person, it's always going to be the Bears.
okay. And so
If you're going to make a pick, it's the Bears for sure.
you're happy with the Bears pick of Justin Fields to change their quarterback dysfunction they've had over the years, hopefully.
People seem to be. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't follow it. I'm terrible. I don't follow professional sports. I watch them, but I don't follow them.
Okay.
Probably an
Well,
anomaly.
let me ask you this as we begin to wrap this up, Becky. You've been around the block. You've involved nationally. You're an accomplished athletic administrator. If you had two things that you were going to share with a new athletic administrator, my definition of new is anywhere between 1 to 4 years. What two things would be an absolute must in order for that person to succeed as an effective athletic administrator?
All right, I'm going to take a liberty and give you 3, if that's okay.
And if you'd like, because it's you can even give me 4.
Oh man, I have 3.
Okay.
So I think the first one is just to be inquisitive and learn from others. I think that, I've been doing this for a couple of years now. I won't reveal my age, but a couple of years now. And I find athletic administrators to be one of the most sharing groups of individuals. And so if I can give that advice, we want to help you. There are certainly people out there that have done what you're hoping to do, and they will share their ideas with you, and then you can format it to fit your school and your community. So be inquisitive and learn.
Okay, let me interrupt you before you get to the next two, because I like that point you brought about sharing, and I've said this in some of the other podcasts. It's so strange when you grow up as a coach and you go to a clinic, a coach will stand up there and he'll give you, here's the X's and O's. This is what we do in our trap defense out of a 1-3-1 or a 2-3 in basketball. And you know that they're holding back that 40 to 50% of their secrets. But when you go to an AD conference or you're talking with ADs, they lay out the whole, they say, oh yeah, here, take my handbook. Don't make up a new one. Take the parts you want from mine, and here's another one, and take what you want. So I certainly appreciate that part you said about sharing, but I interrupted. So let me let you get to the other two.
It's all good. And I'll just go a little bit further on that. Not even are we willing to share, we'll help you implement it. Like I will give you what I'm doing and help you implement it to be the most effective in your school that you can be, because that's the goal, right? You lead people who lead kids. And so you need to be great. So that's one. I think build a network is the second one, and know those people around you, know what you need to learn from other people, and know that not one person can be your network, right? You want to make sure that, everyone, Hutch, you're in my network, right? Like I have this tremendously large network because everybody fills something. Everybody's really good at something and can help you in different ways. And I would say, don't be afraid to get outside of your comfort zone and meet new people. Go to a class, talk to the people next to you. Don't just, that I think it's so important to, when you have the opportunities to go to conferences and there are other people there that maybe you don't know already, get to know them. They will make you a better athletic administrator. And then the last thing, this is my last piece of advice, unless you really want 4, is that you don't have to do it all at once. You might have all these great ideas and you want to implement all of them. You do not have to do them all today. You have plenty of time to build on the things that you're trying to do and get better as the years go on. It's not going to happen overnight. We're working on some rebranding and rebuilding here, and it was going to become one word for me just now. And I've talked to our coaches. We're 8 to 10 years out from being where we want to be, right? This is not an overnight. We didn't get here overnight. We're not going to get there overnight. And so being willing to put in the energy and the effort it takes to get to where you want to go is key, and not trying to do it all at once, because that's just setting yourself up for that failure word we talked about earlier.
Great suggestions for those new ADs out there. Hopefully you'll be able to incorporate a couple of things. So let me finish with this, Becky. What questions should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
I wrote a couple down. I couldn't come up with a great one. I talked to my secretary about it. I said, what should I ask? And she said, do something fun. What was your favorite sports team? What's your favorite color? What do I like to bake? I don't know. I couldn't come up with one. I wrote down, what is your why? But I feel like my why came through in my answers today. But those would be some of the things that she told me to ask. I don't know. Ask away. I'm an open book. You know that, Hutch.
That's great. Well, I just thought it was a great way to end a conversation. I stole it from Dan Rather from the big interview. At least people think that I'm that original that I came up with that idea. So that's how that works. Once again, AD's borrowing from other people. So
absolutely.
that wraps up another edition of the UIAAA Connection. Our guest once again has been Becky Moran, CMAA, current board member of the NIAAA. Thanks for being with us, Becky.
Thanks for having me on, Hutch. It was great.
And for our listeners, we hope you tune in next Friday for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.